are here today with Pam from Highest Potential Pathways, and we're going to talk a little bit about what she does and how she might be of help to our families, and just kind of go from there. So why don't we go ahead and get started with are you telling us a little bit more about yourself and how you got started?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me here too. So I'm Pam Barron. I started 16 years ago as a special education teacher. I taught in a lot of different settings, urban, rural, virtual, you name it, I've kind of done it. And in 2020, I welcomed my first child into the world right before the pandemic shut down. I think I got home from the hospital the day before everything shut down. And it was 2 months after that that we discovered that he had a congenital heart defect. And through a lot of appointments and a lot of navigation, we kind of learned at about 4 months old that he was a candidate for open heart surgery. And it was just kind of a waiting game to get like his optimal development and get him into the right window for surgery. So that was kind of the first big hiccup. And what started me kind of thinking like, gosh, this parenthood journey sure isn't what I thought it could be. Fast forward to 2022, and my oldest son was going to have open heart surgery in 2023 early, and I was due in August of 2022. So I was looking ahead at a school year, thinking I'm going to be gone on maternity leave for 3 months, and then I'll be back for about 2 months, and then I'm going to be gone again for open heart surgery for another 2 months. And that wasn't going to work for me, for my students and families that I was working with. So in July, I stepped back from teaching. And my second son was then born with something called HIE, which stands for hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which basically means he was born not breathing. He was full term, healthy pregnancy. And it's basically a brain injury due to lack of oxygen at birth. So he went 5 minutes without any oxygen. Taken away before I even saw him. And he underwent 72 hours of hypothermic cooling. So they actually laid him on a mat, cooled his body temperature down to 92 degrees, essentially keeping him in a hypothermic state, to allow all the stem cells to like hopefully regenerate and repair any damage that was done by not having oxygen. So thus went the rest of my, or relaunched kind of like my medical mom journey. Finally made it home, and he was 2 months old when he was rehospitalized due to a lot of breathing issues and concerns. And I was literally in the hospital with him at like 2 or 3 in the morning. Nurses were coming in to do cares, and I was up there, up awake. And I just thought, parents need more support. I know my babies are cared for. I felt wholeheartedly that they were in the best care possible, but I felt very much alone. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what life would look like. And so I took that and I kind of sat with it and reached out to a couple of people that I was close to, and kind of knew that this was sitting on my mind of like starting a coaching business and working with people with disabilities and their families. And literally I launched the business from the hospital room, Highest Potential Pathways LLC. And really my aim is to provide the parents with the support, helping them weed through like the kind of like the chaos and the overwhelm of all the information, all the decisions, and the grief and the trauma of what they went through, or what they're going through, and just kind of helping them find their footing, helping them find their voice, helping them feel empowered and capable to take on this big role of parent caregiver. And that's kind of where I am now. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years.
Okay. And it's funny that you mentioned all of that because we all kind of, our stories are similar in that wasn't expected. Here we are, we're doing something we're both very passionate about. And I often tell people when I'm talking to them that I do more macro, you do more micro. Like I do the what's your plan for when this happens and that happens, and you do more of like what's happening today that I can help you with. And so I feel like it's a really great complement to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that note, can you tell me what services you provide to families raising children with disabilities and special needs?
Yeah. And we've kind of talked about that, right? Janice, like your question is like, what keeps you up at night? And my question is more like, what's going on in life today, this minute that we are talking, what's going on? How do you feel? And we keep kind of one eye to the future, but really like, I'm here to help you get through today, this week, this month. And then, I find people like you, Janice, that I'm like, this is a person that can help you with like that big plan, that big thing that's up ahead. But I'm here to help you, maybe get through some of the mindset or the fears that come in with, I don't know how to talk about myself dying or my child passing away before me and preparing for that. That's a hard topic. And I know, Janice, you lead parents through that and you hold their hand through the process and they're not alone in figuring that out with you. I may be a step before that to say like, hey, what do I even need to do to get you to reach out to a Janice to get this service, right? Like what barriers are in your way, whether they're placed on you by society or they're self-inflicted and you don't even realize it because you're in survival mode. And truthfully, when you're in survival mode, you can't access other parts of your brain that you would have had before that. So when I work with families and they're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? I'm like, because you're in survival mode. Your brain is not thinking about that. That's why I'm here to like help bring you back out of that, that brain that's really focused on right here, right now, this second.
Well, fight or flight, which is
Yeah.
a majority of what families are in. It's fight
Or
or flight.
freeze.
Yep.
Yep. And I would say I deal with like that freeze part. Right? There's no forward motion, and that's really what coaching is. Therapy looks at past traumas. They look at healing that part. I don't touch that. Most of the clients I work with have a therapist, and I want them to. That's a really helpful resource. I work with more like, here you are, here's your starting point. Where do you want to go and how come you're not getting there? And what can I do to help, cut down the weeds that are in your way and tangling up your feet and keeping you where you are, where you don't want to be.
Well, it could be, for instance, a barrier of a spouse or a partner, of your ways of doing things are different or your ways of thinking are different, or, and how can you live and function in that environment in a productive way or a way that can move things forward. Because let's be honest, I mean, that's one of the things that Kelly, my wife, and we went through a lot of that. She was very much the pleaser, the yes mom, and I was very much the no mom. I was the one that pushed Morgan to be more independent, be uncomfortable, things like that. Whereas Kelly was more of the, let me hold your hand, let me take care of that for you. And, I'm sure that most families, most partnerships and relationships can relate to that. And so when you're trying to move forward, a lot of times that is a total barrier, or like you, to your point, a freeze point of how do we move forward if we both can't agree on something? Let's be honest, there might not be an agreement, but maybe it's well, I can compromise, or something. Growing up, my mom was a single mom for many, many years of my life, and I tell people all the time that we always had this philosophy or an agreement with each other that we would listen. We might not always agree with one another, but we will listen. And that always gave us an opportunity to move forward. And I feel like that's a life lesson that I've been able to bring into my relationship. So hopefully we can at least hear one another's perspective, and maybe we don't agree with it, but if it's in the best interest of our dependents, sometimes we have to put our agreements and our differences to the side. So I feel like that's one way that people could see how you, and I don't do any of that. That's not my space at all, and that's why I feel like we complement each other very, very well. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about, maybe the coaching. Are there any other scenarios like I just talked about that might be something that is that aha moment for a parent or a guardian, that they're like, oh, yep, that's exactly something that I'm experiencing right now? Can you maybe give me a couple examples of that?
Absolutely. So, one that comes to mind that I've helped several families with is, the big idea is getting used to being more uncomfortable, because I don't think anyone really ever reaches a place like, oh, I'm super comfortable in this, right? There's always fear, there's always doubt, especially when you're talking about, a child with a disability, a dependent, someone who very much relies on you for their caregiving. Like you don't just walk away from them during respite and be like, okay, good luck, right? Like there's this feeling of discomfort, and you just kind of have to learn how to manage through that discomfort. So that's one area, is, really helping families explore their greater community of, I call it like their connections, their love and connective circles. Like, who is in your circle? And maybe it's paid providers. It certainly can be. It can be your medical providers, but it's like, who else in your community is there? Is it a spouse or partner? Is it a grandparent? Is it your next door neighbor? And this idea of, it doesn't have to be someone that fully understands, fully, agrees with what you're doing, but shows up as a community to say, I'm here to support you. So it's teaching, not even teaching, but just helping parents open up that community to support their child, to let them know, I love and care about you, but so does this larger community. We're here to help you, to lift you up, to make sure you belong and you're cared for. So that's one area. Another one is taking care of oneself. We hear it all the time. I feel like, especially in, disability and special needs, it's almost a cringe word of like self-care. People are like, don't talk to me about self-care. So I try not to use those words necessarily, but the idea is the same of, you can only be as good a caregiver as you are a caretaker of yourself. And that's not to say you feel great all the time, surely not. But it is, and you don't need, this big giant breath of fresh air every now and then, but it's, small daily things. What are you doing to make sure you're breathing, to make sure you're getting a break, to make sure you can, talk to someone about what you're going through? And sometimes that's me, I'm like a neutral party in that, but sometimes it's somebody else. But other times it is helping families step away. A couple families come to mind where, it took a few months of work to get to that point, and then it comes out, I really just need to get away. I need to process what's happening. I need to spend some quality time with my spouse, because we've been in transaction mode for years, and this is our whole life. Like, we need to make sure that we are on solid footing together. So I've literally been on calls where we use our time to plan that getaway, because it's vital, and that allows families to step away, to process, to think about their own needs, and then come back, 10 times better than they were before, because they've had a moment to rest and digest and clear their minds, which also can help them with decision making later on too, when they've had that time to kind of have quiet in their own minds and think about what they need and what they want.
Well, that's great. Yeah, because just in everyday life, things are just so hectic, and we get into that transactional thing, and yeah, it's important to find that space. So 100%, I agree with that. So just out of curiosity, what experience, education, or training do you need to become a disability life quality coach?
Question. you don't need anything is the short answer. To be a coach, it's like an I forget what they call it. It's like not a, I can't think of what it's called, but like you don't have to have any kind of certification to call yourself a coach, because it doesn't follow any particular set of care, if you want to think of it that way. Like, if you're working with a therapist, like they have very specific tools and strategies that help with, dealing with different things. Coaching is really just, I would say you have to be a really good listener. I don't talk a lot in meetings with my clients, because a lot of times what people don't know is they already have a lot of the answers themselves. I'm not really giving advice. I'm not giving answers. I'm allowing space to let those thoughts come out, and I'll ask questions here and there, but very intentional questions. They're not like, oh, I'm curious, as to why it's this way. It's really like, I want them to think about a certain question, and all of a sudden they're coming up with their own solutions. So it's more about, how good can you listen, and then kind of take that and kind of reflect back what they're saying. That said, it is important to me as a past educator, and, maybe someday educator once again. I really like to have information. I really like to learn. So, I was a special education teacher. So I obtained both an undergrad and a master's degree in special education. So I have that. And then I found one coaching program in the whole of the world called, it was through an organization called the Teaching and Educational Resource Institute. They're out of California, and they have a whole campus really geared toward people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, from, really like that. I think they have services starting at birth all the way through adulthood. And so I got an actual certification. It was a 16-week process working with them to learn kind of about that whole life spectrum that a person with a disability goes through, what their families go through, as well as finding local resources. So I spent a lot of time going out into our community. I live in Dane County, so that's where I was going to learn about, different in-home support services, different day programs, different like residential facilities, so that I could learn and speak to the real people doing the work, so that I could have a more rounded understanding of that when I'm working with families.
Interesting. So what, when a couple comes to you, or an individual, what outcomes can a client expect when working with you?
So we are goal oriented. So that's one of the first things we do during a consult call at the onset, is like, I kind of say, like, the analogy that sticks with me is like, you bring your purse and you kind of dump it all out. Like, here's all the contents of my purse. Here's all the stuff. And from there, we pull out, anywhere from like 2 to 4 goals that we really want to work toward. And they're pretty broad, but I would say like the main ones that come through are feeling confident in their advocacy. How to really embrace the fact that they are their child's best expert. And I say that all the time. Yes, all these other people are experts in their field of what they're doing, but they're not the expert on your child. So really like helping them step into that power. That's typically like one of the very common themes. Another one, another goal that we really work toward is, again, like, how are you taking care of yourself in this? And then it can get more specific from there. Like, it might be home is really difficult because, the transition from school to home or on breaks gets really hectic, and we're not sure what to do. And gosh, trying to figure out summer care for my kids so I can keep my job is really difficult. So then we can get more specific that way. But I would say, as like, the problem is never solved, right? We never, like, nothing's ever like cured and there's no longer an issue. It kind of just changes and evolves as the child changes and evolves themselves. But I do, so some clients are just with me for a really long time, like over a year. Some have worked with me. And some are like, I just need help with like this one specific thing. So they work with me for 6 to 8 weeks. And really the outcome is you feel like you can take the next few steps on your own. And then when you hit that next stumbling block, you come back to me. So really just helping them feel like they've got more power over their choices, over their options, over their life to make it what they want. And they get to go do that for a while until the next thing comes up, and then we revisit and we readjust and we set new goals and keep working through it.
Okay, so you answered my next question.
Okay, great.
So a lot of people ask me when I talk to them, well, how do you get paid? So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I do accept private pay, but also, one of the things that has always been really important to me is just access. I think there's plenty of barriers to everything, and it bothers me. It bothers me that like things aren't just easier to access. And that's both like in a real life sense, like why is it so difficult to get into a store if you have a wheelchair? Like basic functional access is one that like really gets me going. But then it's also access to services and the right services and the services that you want. And that's where, like in Wisconsin, we have CLTS, the Children's Long-Term Support Network, and then IRIS. I think it's I choose, or no, I can't remember what IRIS stands for.
I can't either.
I just say it's the adult version of CLTS.
Yes.
Yes. Most adults that get IRIS have gotten CLTS. They kind of know, but really, so those are paid for through Medicaid. Families that qualify work with their case manager, and their case manager helps them set up for me. So families don't, if they're through the CLTS or hopefully one day IRIS, I'm not covered there yet. But if you're listening and you're an IRIS holder, come to me and we'll figure it out. But really like the Medicaid pays for it in full, aside from whatever the family would have to pay to CLTS as a whole. But that's really where I get most of my clients are, referred to me through people like you or, other folks in the community, as well as the CLTS caseworkers that, hear their family's needs and then try to help them find the services that are going to, be most beneficial.
Okay. So as you mentioned, a lot of people come through me, but what if they don't? How can they access getting a hold of you? What's the best and is there a process that they need to go through?
There is. It's pretty straightforward. I'm a one-woman show. I'm me, myself, and I in the business. So, anytime you're reaching out, you're getting me. I say the email is the best way. So pam@highestpotentialpathways.com. Also at my website, I have different links there that will get you to my calendar that you can pick a time. So I always start with a 20-minute consult call. So families can reach out to me directly to set that up. And it's part of my questions. Hey, do you already receive CLTS? If so, who do you work with? Because then I loop them in and say, we need to update the ISP and this is, this is what we're going to do. Or a CLTS case manager might email me with a family copied on an email to say, hey, can you set up a quick call? One thing that I really make sure is that I do that 20-minute call. Sometimes it's longer, but because I want them to understand what they're getting from coaching, and I want to understand what their needs are. Because if I can't meet a need, I'm not going to pretend that I can. If a family brings up something that I'm not equipped or qualified for, I'm not going to say that I can. So we start with that, and then from there, it all kind of just works through the case manager. So you can reach out to me, or you can get a hold of your case manager to connect us.
Okay. Is there anything that you think I missed that you think people might find important when seeking services that you provide?
I guess one thing, as I go and talk to more people, I gain even more clarity on what it is that I do, because it's kind of, it's not known. I don't know of any other providers that do what I do in the state. There might be a few, I just don't know of them. But certainly it's not a well-known practice. So, one thing that I really like to say is like, if you are overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, I might be the person that you need. Kind of get through that like first layer of like complete overwhelm, the support to get you the support you need kind of a thing. And truly, like, you're not alone. I know people say that, but truly, like, all the families that I talk to, I could pick strands from every single family and braid them together. Like, you're not. So it's just helping you find the people that can understand on a different level and that you can feel heard. And I guess, I can be that neutral ear that you can tell me all the really hard things and know that it's not going to at all reflect on how you love your child, right? It's going to be hard as heck, but that doesn't take away from how much you love and care for them. But sometimes you just need to tell somebody how dang hard it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we definitely need people like you. So we're very lucky to have you. So thank you for what you do. With that being said, again, this is Pam from Highest Potential Pathways, and I'm Janice from Morgan's Caring Connection with our empowerment session, explaining a little bit more about the services that you do. Please feel free to reach out to her directly if you have any questions or would like to have a consultation. And again, thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Janice.